one of New Zealand's biggest musicians returning home.
The year is 2010, and Brooke Fraser is riding high in the charts, number one with There's Something in the Water. But she's not happy about it. The whole time she's thinking, this song really needs some oboe. Well, 14 years later, she can finally put it right, and she joins us in the studio this morning. Brooke Fraser, hello.
Hey, hello.
We're so excited that you are back in New Zealand. You are going to be performing at the Spark Arena on June the 22nd with the Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra.
Fraser played all her big hits from the era where she was hugely popular here, about 15 to 20 years ago, at a sold-out show at Spark Arena in Auckland. But it wasn't just nostalgia bringing in the crowds. Overseas, she's known under her married name as
Brooke Ligertwood.
Oh, wow.
You're here.
You nailed that.
known for saying things like,
How do I find joy? I walk with Jesus. I get closer to Jesus. And the joy is a gift of and from him.
I'm excited about the thunder that's happening outside. All through the Bible, we hear about how the voice of God thunders. And in the New Testament, it said when God spoke, some people heard a voice and other people heard thunder. So who knows? Maybe it's the voice of God.
Kia ora, I'm Tom Kitchen, and today on The Detail, where does Christian music sit in the New Zealand music scene? We're not talking about Christmas carols or hymns here, but live modern rock and pop music aimed at mainly young people at Pentecostal-style churches. And what power does music have in that world? Firstly, an overview of where Christian music is at now in New Zealand. Here's the organiser of a big Christian music festival.
G'day, my name's Graham Burt and I'm the Executive Director of Festival One.
It just combines everything I love. Good God, good people, good music.
Festival One's been around for how many years now?
11, unbelievably. It seems like 5 minutes, but 11 years.
What is it and where is it?
Well, it's newly at Karapiro. It was at Mystery Creek. It's a 4-day, 3-night residential, you come camp festival, Christian music festival, centred around community art and music, alcohol and drug free, all ages.
So tell me, how big is the festival? How many people come?
In terms of breathing souls on site, around about, because it's complicated with artists and crew and everything, around about 5,500, 6,000 people.
And tell me how Festival One formed. So obviously Parachute was the big Christian music festival that was around for over 20 years, right?
11 o'clock this morning. The sun shining on a revved-up crowd who are finally getting on site at Parachute 08. 30,000 people are expected through the gates this year, and they're ready to rock.
24
years. But that was stopped, right?
Yep.
How did Festival One kind of come out of the ashes of Parachute? Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, kind of. I'm part of a charitable trust, Wilberforce Foundation, that does a lot of philanthropic giving. Anecdotally, I think at the time when the de Jongs decided to stop running Parachute, we were probably its largest donor. And so we were obviously giving money to it because we thought, hey, this is a good thing. We think it's a great idea. So when it just stopped out of the blue, we were somewhat surprised. We sat down, one of the trustees and I, and we were just having a cup of coffee and said, what do you reckon? And I said, I'm gutted. He said, what do you want to do about it? I didn't say anything. And then he said, if I found a way to fund it, would you run it? And that was the whole conversation. But that gave us the opportunity to look at what was, the market was shifting quite hard. And what people were wanting was shifting. And so do we do the same thing? Do we do it differently? What do we do?
Well, what was the value in having a festival like Parachute?
Look, for me, it's simple. I went to, I think, almost every Parachute. I attended a really small church, about 150 people. And to go to a place that had thousands of people, I felt a lot less strange.
So just like a gathering of the Christian community.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, a chance to hang out with a whole bunch of mates.
Right, and then Parachute stopped.
Yeah.
So how did the market change, and how did you think you had to change what Festival One would be compared to Parachute?
I think the single biggest difference is that Parachute was concentrating on being a music festival, and we're concentrating on being more of a gathering feel of people coming together.
So tell me about how the musicians that come, how many musicians do you have, or how many artists do you have at Festival One, and where do they come from?
It ranges a little bit. I think the lowest we've ever had was 35 bands and artists, and the highest, I think, was 55. It changes year on year. And, of course, the next obvious question is where are they from and how many are the overseas and Kiwis? Let's take a random number. Let's say 40 bands. Of that, 5 probably would be from overseas. The rest would be local.
And tell me about some of the biggest names. I mean, I have to say I looked through, what was it, last year, and I didn't recognise one name on there. But maybe that's maybe that's just because I'm not in that
world.
In that world, yeah.
Probably the biggest historic Christian band is a band called Switchfoot. They've been around for 100 years.
Yep.
They've been to us twice. Prior to that, we had a band called For King and Country, who are pretty large in the US. Lauren Daigle was the year before that. She's a crossover artist. She spent, I think, she got to number 3 on the Billboard 200.
But a few kind of local artists as well. And how did you go about finding them?
We go out and shoulder tap people, say, hey, come and play. Because there's quite a very, very vibrant scene in New Zealand. And so we pick up on that.
You talk about a vibrant Christian music scene in New Zealand,
Yeah.
you know. A lot of us, you know, we're not really in that world, so we don't really know about it. But where is the scene and how is it vibrant?
It's the same as music pretty much everywhere else. There's been a whole resurgence because of the ability to get your music published and out there really easily. It's the same. People are doing exactly what's happening in any genre you can think of, whether it's rap, reggae, whatever. There's just more and more of it every 5 minutes, right? So what we're finding is people form a band or start writing or recording their material, and then they think, where can I put this out? So obviously you do all the normal social channels, but then to have a thing like a festival like this that you can aim at, and especially one if you're writing Christian music that's targeted just at Christians, then you can go, well, hang on, maybe I might get to play there. So,
but where does the scene kind of start at? I mean, are these at churches? Is that where it all kind of starts? People get together, they play some music, and then from there
Yeah, partly. I mean, church and music is synonymous, right? There's been hymns in churches and music in churches for as long as there's been churches, right? So you find that kids in church grow up with music, and a lot of them are musicians, singers, or play instruments as a result of that. Schools, same thing, coming out of schools. It's like a natural thing for a lot of our community.
And you got some stats here about, you know, how kind of big it is around the world, do you?
Oh, a couple. The New Zealand market, it's not big enough to segment, but in the US, which is an example, Christian music is around between 4 and 5% of the entire music market. That still makes it very, very big, by the way.
Would you say it's under the radar, though?
I was thinking about driving in here, like, Christian music, it's simplistic to lump it all together in one thing, right? So music that's sung in church, in the Christian world, we would largely call that worship music. It's just a useful title. That's one whole stream, but then there's another whole stream of performance music, and then there's another whole stream that's crossover, like the Lauren Daigle story, where she's immense as an artist globally, and her songs are in different TV shows and whatever else, and that's a whole nother genre in itself. And those are all loosely lumped together in that one title. So it's difficult to describe it.
Do you think it's a label that's worth it, though? I mean, Mark de Jong, who heads Parachute, doesn't think it even should be a label anymore.
No.
Christians are right through the music industry. You know, they're in the rock category, they're in the rap category, they're in every category. To have a separate category for Christian music, it's not a genre.
Do you want to go philosophical for a second?
Go ahead, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's whether I happen to be a Christian myself. So is everything I do Christian? That's where Mark's coming from. As in, if I do something, I am doing it as a Christian. So whether I do music, whether I make a painting, whether I do whatever. Mark's argument is to cut it into a genre and call it something just because I'm that is labelling it unnecessarily.
Do you think it's become more popular and more mainstream over time, kind of Christian music, worship music, or has it gone even more under the radar?
Both. Christian music has gone, or let's call it worship music, has gone more specific. And so it's talking about God increasingly more specifically and feelings about God more specifically. So somebody who wasn't travelling in that stream of faith, that would be of no interest to them whatsoever. So in one sense, whilst that's a huge and underground to the general market way of working in music, that's still there and very viable. But the people who are writing about the struggles of their life, the struggles of friendships, the struggles of anxiety, of all the things that crop up, and are writing that eloquently and well, and then performing that eloquently and well, that's becoming increasingly noticeable. And there's a bunch of people writing who you wouldn't know that necessarily that they're Christian. It's not their point to make that. It's just that they're writing accurately and well about their own lives.
What kind of value is there to Christian music, though, and, gatherings of people at, say, places like Parachute Festival One? What's the value of gathering together like that?
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything spiritual?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
The easiest analogy is a crowd. When you go to a concert of anybody, you get a shared feeling, right? You go to a U2 concert and you're standing next to a whole bunch of people and you're all singing along together and you think everybody's your brother or your sister at that point, right? And there's a sense of common identity. Mm. When we get together as Christians, that is amplified. That not only is that shared sense of common identity, but there's a shared sense of the direction of where that identity is pointed. And that's unbelievably powerful.
What do you mean, the direction?
Well, it's aimed at God.
Yeah.
It's marvellous. It provides a deeper connection.
Now for another take. David Farrier is a Kiwi journalist and documentary maker based in Los Angeles. A self-described agnostic, David writes for his own blog Webworm and has written a lot about abuse in Christian church circles, in particular the Arise and Hillsong congregations. So after Brooke Fraser's concert, he felt he had to write a story.
I think Brooke Fraser is a really interesting artist. I mean, obviously she's incredibly talented in every imaginable way. She can write an amazing song. She's got an amazing voice. I've been wanting to write about this other aspect to her for a while now, and it just seemed that her performing this, record-breaking solo concert in New Zealand was a good opportunity to talk about it. And I guess that's the fact that she's had this really close, interesting relationship with one of the biggest mega churches on the earth, Hillsong. And I think that's just something that a lot of people don't know, and I think it's worth addressing.
Hillsong, you've written quite a bit about what has gone on there, right? So just take me through kind of what you found and what happened. Obviously, the founder had to leave in particular circumstances.
Hillsong founder Brian Houston has quit the megachurch following an internal investigation revealing inappropriate behaviour towards two women.
Hillsong isn't a cult, but it operates in a similar way in that there is a lot of money siphoned up from a congregation up to the upper echelons of the church. There are some deeply problematic power dynamics in these churches. The entire structure of the churches is problematic. And then it's various views that a church like Hillsong carries. They're not all inclusive towards the LGBTQI community. They have some really dicey thoughts on the role of women in church and just in the world in general. They really like taking your money. They like it a lot. And they make, the upper management in Hillsong, they make a lot of money. And then there's the sex scandals and all those other things that are sort of thrown in that have recently led to Brian Houston, their leader, moving away from the church finally. And I think when all that scandal broke, the headlines kind of got so, there are documentaries you can watch about Hillsong that go into all of this.
Brian's pushing people to the limit.
Hillsong culture is loyalty to Hillsong.
There was a series of violent criminal acts against children.
Did you cover up your father's sex abuse?
They had meetings about not telling anyone.
Once those headlines started becoming a lot more intense, I think that's when Brooke Fraser stepped away from her main role there, which was writing their biggest hits and making a lot of money for the church and for herself.
Has she come back to the church since then, do you know? There's talk of her, still being a part of it or leaving and coming back.
Yeah, I'm trying to get confirmation on that as we talk. I mean, she has stepped away from her role specifically with the church to, write their hits, as part of their main music arm. But, you often find, people don't leave these churches easily. It would not surprise me at all if she's still attending services and part of that world, because it's been her world for a long time. And, what these mega churches tend to do is take over every aspect of your life. And so, I imagine she still is reasonably connected to that place, despite stepping away from the specific music role she's had leading their worship team. Music's a huge part of these mega churches. It's how they get young people in the door. If you're a teenager going into those environments, or you're looking for something in your life to make sense, if you sort of walk into some incredible music, written and sung by Brooke Fraser, then that's going to be a big plus, and it's going to get you in those seats. And ultimately, it's going to get you tithing and giving, 10% of your income to these churches, which is what they request of you.
But have people told you about their experience, through your reporting on Arise and Hillsong, etc.? Have people told you about their experience with music and what it means to them?
I've experienced it. I grew up in the church, not in mega church environments, but certainly, I've been to Parachute a number of times. I was a big fan of Christian bands like DC Talk, Newsboys, Jars of Clay. I still have a soft spot for those bands, but music has this really uncanny ability to move you. And, I think if for anyone that's been to a concert that they love, whether it's Taylor Swift or Bruce Springsteen or a Nine Inch Nails show, whatever you're into, that music will move you. When you're in a church environment, what you're being told often is that is God. It's not a reaction to the music. It's not something that is artificially being created in that room that connects to your brain and your brain chemicals. It's a movement of God. And ultimately, what they're trying to get you to do in those churches is to A, stay, and B, give them your money and your time. And that's how they continue to operate. I remember being at Parachute and listening to those bands that I loved, and I was convinced that it was God there. And look, it might have been, but I'll also say I felt a very similar feeling at a metal show. Maybe that was Satan in me or something. I don't know, but I would argue it's the music doing it. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing that music does. And why I became really fascinated with Brooke is that I'm not saying that she isn't talented and amazing. She's all those things. I just think it's important to know that her other main gig is writing hits and getting very wealthy from an incredibly problematic megachurch.
The other thing that's been talked about a little bit in the media is the mention of a man called Paul that she thanked.
There are countless people who have been a part of my team over the years. I want to thank them. I want to thank CRS Management, Campbell and Paul, who are here tonight, have been with me from the very early days.
Who is this man, Paul?
Ali Mao did a series of articles when she was covering a Me Too round several years ago. And Paul was part of CRS Management, and they managed Brooke Fraser and still manage Brooke Fraser. When those stories broke, and I won't go into the details of those now, that they're all online if you Google his name. Paul McKesser, he was stood down as he should have been, and he made a post, I think, as on Instagram about that. And what was unusual about the concert that Brooke Fraser put on was that I'm not directly quoting here, but she thanked CRS and she mentioned two names at CRS, and Paul was one of them, which was unusual because this is someone who had supposedly stepped down. So, I've reached out to CRS Management to confirm whether he is back in any capacity or what he's doing.
CRS has since said Paul McKesser is back working there, and he's had significant therapy while he's been away. But he won't be made a director again. I asked David if he thinks there's a double standard here, Brooke thanking McKesser, but at the same time as she's living and breathing Christianity.
I think, being a role model for New Zealanders and yet still being involved in a church like that, I think it does speak to double standards.
Is Brooke Fraser doing a good job here, or is she trying to convert people into a world that may not be good for them?
I would argue that Hillsong is not a good place to be involved in. And yeah, she's a big part, has been a big part of their marketing campaign. I mean, if you Google Brooke Fraser, Google will return all her big hits, and they're all her songs she's written for Hillsong United, their worship team. And so, those songs are used to bring people into the church and convert people. And, I just think we should acknowledge that. She has profited a lot off this church. The church has also, thanks to her star power and her incredible talent, has gotten new converts in the door. And those new converts, they keep the entire system running. I just think it's something we should talk about. She is welcome to do that. And she has done that and has done very well from it. And she can do what she wants to do. But I just want people to be aware of this side of her artistry and how it's being used, because I think some people will be interested. I just think music should be enjoyed for what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to have a God element involved. If you want to go and enjoy and be moved by U2 or Metallica or Brooke Fraser, just take your pick, you know?
And if you want to be moved by worship music, then you can listen to it, I guess.
Yeah, just be cautious about the world that might be drawing you into.
Back to my conversation with Graham Burt from Festival One. There's a few criticisms that sometimes appear when it comes to Christianity and Christian music, right?
Yep, go for it.
So not exactly Festival One directly, but we're thinking Hillsong, we're thinking Arise, we're thinking about music that brings people into this culture that isn't good for them.
Yep.
What do you say when people say...
That's a fair call.
Yeah.
That's a completely fair call. Yeah, it's heartbreaking and it's terrible. It is just not right in anybody's language, right?
Well, is there anything at Festival One you're doing to try and combat that kind of feeling or thoughts and criticisms that some people have when it comes to Christian music and Christianity?
Be specific.
Trying to, stop sexual assault or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah.
I think anybody that organises a large event needs to be careful, whether it's Christian or not. So all our volunteers are police vetted. That's crucial, but that's just basic event hygiene that you have to do that, right? But that's not the answer either. It's more than that. I think it's how you do things. So let me give you an example. Many people that run an event like this, because it's a resident, camping event, would be staying in something quite nice, either on site or off-site. People that have run events like this, have stayed in the hotels in the nearest cities so that they get a good night's sleep. And that makes perfect sense. I camp in a rooftop tent on my truck, right smack in the middle of it. I think by modelling and doing and being incredibly deliberate about how you do things, you can avoid the excesses that you're talking about and that break both of our hearts, which is where you end up with a highly hierarchical structure and people are taken advantage of. Which is just plain wrong. What I'm longing for, and I'm encouraging a bunch of our young songwriters to do here, and people I'm in touch with overseas, is to write the protest songs again. And that used to happen.
Such as?
In 1972, so we're now talking in the top of the hippie movement, the Jesus Revolution, all that carry on, right?
Yeah.
Dim, dark past, right? A young man called Larry Norman, who had a little bit of a hit in America with a band called People, became a Christian. And he started looking at the American society around him in 1972 and thinking, I actually don't like this. And he wrote a song that became famous right around the world, especially in Christian circles. But I'll just give you a couple of lyrics because it's an example of what I'm encouraging people to try and write now. So here's what he was writing in 72. I was born and raised an orphan in a land that once was free, in a land that poured its love out on the moon. And I grew up in the shadows of your silos filled with grain, but you never helped to fill my empty spoon. You kill a black man at midnight just for talking to your daughter. Then you make his wife your mistress and you leave her without water. And the sheet you wear upon your face is the sheet your children sleep on. He's talking about Ku Klux Klan. And at every meal you say a prayer you don't believe, but still you keep on. And your money says in God we trust, but it's against the law to pray in school. You say we beat the Russians to the moon, and I say you starved your children to do it. And it goes on and on and on.
So he's
like
talking
that.
about the Christian society he doesn't approve of or doesn't like there.
Well, the American society, the Christian society, the whole thing. And he's saying, stand by, this doesn't make any sense. But I'm encouraging people around me to go, look at the excesses in our own community. Look at what's going on in there. Call it out. Write about it. Art's so jolly powerful. Paint it. Spoken word it, write it in a lyric, get jolly into it, bite your teeth into it and speak it with great passion. I'm beginning to see that as a new trend. You were asking where was Christian music and where was it going? So park worship music, which is inside the church music, the commentary stuff outside. I think this has got a big future and I'm longing for it to take off.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. Today's episode was produced by Alexia Russell, Davina Zimmer and Gwen McClure. It was engineered by Phil Bench. Thanks to Graham Burt and David Ferrier. I'm Tom Kitchen. Mā te wā.